As we are shunted off at the coattail of the Philosopher's Stone and Harry just barely makes his way into second year, we arrive here, at the corner of Snake Avenue and Spider Road, where we find the Chamber of Sass, awaiting our arrival. So, we take the role of Harry once again as we experience an ever-increasing danger in the video game canon of these books that raised an entire generation into thinking that magic was totally possible to do. Crystal healing works about as well as breaking your leg because you have a headache. Infer what you will from that. Nevertheless, let's find out how this sequel fares. Is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Sass a returning nightmare from the past, or does it play like a dream? Harry's chambery and secretive adventure begins at the Weasleys, with Ron and Harry whimsically smashing right into the front gate of the Weasleys' vertical shit shack. Then, with no damage done to the boys, a successful no damage run complete, the game continues on with Molly showcasing her natural talents as a banshee. Naturally, Harry isn't involved in this Molly triple kill, as even Molly Weasley is part of the Potter fandom. After getting their shit kicked in, the Ginger Gang make their way into the yard to talk to Harry about stuff and things and other stuff. Molly has tasked the boys with ridding. Wait a second. I just realized, those losers have their hand-woven sweaters made by Molly herself, forged from the very fibers of love and motherly strength that Molly exerts in her everyday life. And Harry just has his stupid school robes on? That is totally unfair, and I feel cheated of such incredible swagger. Anyway, Molly wants Huey, Dewey, and Louie to show Kaplooey how to get rid of some gnomes, as it's a very important seasonal issue that the McDucks have to take care of. After figuring out that Harry, over the course of summer break, took after his cousin Dudley and grew dumber than a box of rocks that shot up heroin for 3 years straight, completely forgetting all of the spells he could cast from the year before, we are at least given solace in the fact that Harry never forgot Flipendo. That's right, the god-tier Flipendo, courtesy of Harry's ever-growing neuron pathways, or something smart like that, I guess. After the pure, innate power of death manifests within Harry to break a simple glass jar, we finally reached what I know as the most egregious sin that this game has ever showcased, ever. Beans make a fart noise when they're bad and you pick them up. That's it. And it's not really all that bad, it's kind of funny, but I'm also a 5-year-old when it comes to humor. The real sin comes from the fact that Harry doesn't say his signature lines from the previous game. No more
chocolate
or
booger flavor.
I'll have you know, I felt an absence in my Tom-riddled soul knowing that'd be a consistent loss throughout the game. After we find that out, Forge and Jed head to the barn where they show Harry how to quickscope gnomes off of the rafter. It isn't all too hard, but I did find out that the movement in this game is slightly worse too. I couldn't break Harry's neck by spinning so quick, much as I could before. This game is pure pain already. Oh, and the card collecting is back, though it's about as interesting as it was in the previous game. You can increase your stamina by collecting cards, like you're an actual nerd in the 90s that thought collecting cards was totally wicked. After flipendoing a rubber duck that makes Ron fist bump the air for whatever reason, I get back to discriminating against gnome. And after flipping off the gnomes, Harry has to fight the Weasley's raving, rabid washing machine that sounds like an angry ghost dog. It's easy peasy, taking only 3 shotgun flipendos to the open mouth. And after a celebratory yoga sprint, Forge gives us a chocolate frog and tells us that we have to throw gnomes as far as we can into the field to get rid of them. I just have to flipendo the Gary's gnome, all of them. Actually, I have to do all of them, and it's all over. Ron even puts a little challenge on.
I bet you can't throw a gnome as far as Fred did.
Then the next day starts with the flu powder incident of 1992, where Harry doesn't speak clearly and patiently and instead winds up in the Harry Potter and the War Crime with the Weasleys. Taking a step inside the totally trustworthy Closet of Steel afterwards, we watch as the Malfoys sell a book to Igor the Smeagol impersonator before we get the chance to yoink it. From the book we learn Lumos, or Lumos, depending on if you're British or normal. And we use it to find a secret hidden doorway in the back wall of a creepy, definitely serial killer-esque hallway. I do have a question though. If Lucius was getting rid of dark magic stuff, why was Lumos, sorry, I'm normal, in the book? Is it really a dark magic spell? Or are dark magic spells just circumstantial in some books? That's too much logical thinking. Down the secret pathway, we find a pumpkin pasty, or pastry. No. And the worst part is, Harry doesn't even say it out loud either. First, we lost the beans, then the pastry, probably the cauldron cake too. Our own trauma aside, as Harry has enough of that on his own, we beat and imprison an imp for being an asshole, and we make our way over to a definitely perfectly in working order chest, and pull out a certainly healthy and not moldy owl treat to feed to Hedwig, because we love her so much. Along the way, we pass my favorite addition to the game, and the sole reason why I remember this game. Scotty the Screaming Skull. I'm not sure why I call him Scotty. It's just the name that starts with S for the alliteration, so. It's time to call Hedwig, much like we could do in the previous games, and she helps us by spawning in a ladder thanks to her omnipotent power, which we can use to climb out of here and directly into an attic. And finally, I get to do the meme I've wanted to do since I was first gimped of the chance in the previous game.
What a thrill.
After a bit of navigating falling floors, Harry makes his way outside into a small alley that doesn't matter, so we escape. Then he meets up with Molly and Ginny, who say they were oh so worried in a calm demeanor, and after such a traumatic experience, Harry is expected to shop for his own shit. He couldn't even figure out how to use flu powder. How do these numbskulls expect him to shop? Shopping aside, it turns out Ginny lost her shit in the flu powder. Of course, instead of being responsible and finding it herself, it's Harry's time to simp. First, we find ourselves in a pet shop where the angy owner tells us to get out or else. So naturally, we walk forward at a sneaking pace, and we find the sneaking camera angles for the first time. It is, by all accounts, the single worst camera I've ever experienced in my life. So much so, I wish I could go back in time to middle school when a girl asked me out to the movies and I said I don't really like movies, not knowing she was asking me out, and experience all of that embarrassment all over again. But because this is also a kid's game, the sneaking is a lot easier than in, say, Metal Gear Solid. So we yoink Ginny's brass scales and sprint our way directly out of there. After meandering our way around for a bit, I finally find out that I have to fall into the leaky cauldron subfloors, brimming to the nines with fire-shitting bugs and bloodthirsty barrels. Navigating this place is simple and clean, and after escaping, we talk to the bartender who tells us about butter beer and stuff, and grab Ginny's thing, a feather? A quill or something? Whatever. And then we give it to her. And next, we get to go inside the bookstore and meet Gilderoy Lockhart. Or perhaps this is just a young Colonel Mustard before his Vietnam days. But of course, because Harry is here, Malfoy has to be here as well, and he does more Potter teasing. It does get old at this point because who really cares about Malfoy? You know, besides over half of the Potterheads. Lucius ends up mocking Ginny for being poor, which is going way too far, man. And then he gives her Tom Riddle's diary. Or at this point, it's a mysterious diary that we have no clue exactly what it is. But here's a hint. It's Tom Riddle's diary. Then we get an awkward dialogue sequence where Ron and Harry talk to one another and Gilderoy Lockhart interrupts them to exclaim about his achievements. Whatever. After that, it's go time, and Ron is driving the blue flying car into the Whomping Willow. What in all that is Dumbledore is that? That isn't a Whomping Willow, that's a mauling mahogany. That thing literally eats kids for breakfast. There's no way the population of Hogwarts is so low otherwise. It turns out Harry decided that weed killing was his real wizarding strength, and he takes the time to end the life of a sentient tree. It does try to throw rocks and even the car at you, which is cool. You know, while you dodge and attempt to flipendo it in the eye once it reveals itself. Oh yeah, this thing has an eye now. And I do get to spin to win some ghost dogs before fighting the tree, which is ultimately the only reason I decided to play this game. Too bad you don't get to use Lumos on ghosts later on in the game. A real travesty. But after Ron is saved, we move on to find Snape has found us, threatens to expel us if we do a wacky shenanigan like that again, and we move to the Griffin common room. We get momentarily interrupted by nearly headless Nick, and Harry almost loses his footing walking up the staircase Joe Biden style. The next day, we wander around the grand staircase area on our way to the flying lesson. I guess I was wrong when I said that the flying coach lady would never be seen again, because she does indeed get seen once again. And might I say, she's looking the same as before. But before that, we have to explore the grand staircase, picking up beans and stink pellets and balloons as we go. There's no honor among thieves, though, and since I'm the only one, I guess there's honor. So it's honest. Yeah, I have no clue where I was going with that. But per usual, the flying lesson goes swiftly and smoothly, and the flying coach lady professor gives us an exam on day 2. That is faster than any class I've ever seen, but I'm also American, so our schools kinda suck. These rings spin and shrink and spin and shrink. Some are just straight up sideways that you have to maneuver through. But regardless, Harry passes, and it's off to bed with Ron. The way I said that makes it sound like Harry and Ron sleep together. That is only true on Wattpad. At the end of every day and night, despite students not being allowed to wander the grounds at night, each school gets points. Each house gets points. Even if Gryffindor falls behind due to being caught by prefects and losing points, Slytherin, the only school right on Griffy Baby's tail, loses just enough points to be just 1 point less than Gryffindor. Dumbledore really hates Slytherin, doesn't he? Harry wakes up to Hermione yelling at him about Neville being trapped behind tapestry or something, not realizing he could just crawl out from underneath the curtain with the unicorn on it if he wasn't such a fat ass. It's really not even that hard. He could do it even while he's as fat as he is. Harry gives Hermione a little sass, knowing full well it's going to be his job to do everything for the laziest administration in the world, and he has to use his Ultra Instinct speed to get into the library in order to get his exterminator knowledge growing. Regardless, Harry then has to go to the greenhouses to get Diffindo, the Severing Charm. Oh, did I mention that you can't even free walk on the grounds? It's just signs that point you in certain directions, and you teleport that way. We gained slow ladder climbing, but lost free roam exploration of the grounds. This is totally unfair, and I want my money back. Give me my beans back. No, better yet, give me my flavored beans voice lines back. After grabbing Diffindo, we get attacked by rabid plants that have it out for blood. You know, the typical Potter experience. So once again, Harry proves his exterminator skills by ridding the greenhouse of the plants. Really putting the Potter in Harry Potter there, aren't you, buddy? The really interesting stuff happens once we get back into Hogwarts. As we enter the grand staircase, Harry figures out that his fate has been sealed. He is being haunted by the ghost of Doom Guy, that which wishes to rip and tear Harry for taking his place as Hogwarts' new exterminator. Walking up the grand staircase in the dark of night eventually reveals that something else dire has happened. Nearly Headless Nick is asleep in the middle of the second floor. Dear God. McGonagall finds Harry peeping on Nick's beauty rest and is off to Dumbledore's office for the little bastard. Harry, after doing literally nothing except for talking to the Sorting Hat and Dumbledore telling him about Fawkes, is asked if there's anything at all he'd like to tell Dumbledore.
Come to me. Let me rip you. Let me tear you.
Anything?
And then we save Neville. Oh yeah, I forgot that's what we were initially supposed to do. Next up is Defense Against the Dark Arts. Dark Arts. Defense Against the Dark Arts. I didn't even notice that mistake until now. I'm stupid as hell. Anyway, here we get to learn Expelliarmus from Gilderoy Lockhart. We get to learn Expelliarmus from Lockhart's mystical dungeon of spiky balls. This is straight up looking like a Zelda dungeon, if I'm being honest, but I like Zelda, and I like dungeons. I have to say that there is an extreme amount of shit going on with this camera. The camera collides with walls as you skirt it around Harry, which is what the vast majority of third-person games do. However, the camera also collides with Harry, and it resets automatically after like a second, so you can't even look around with it. Not to mention that movement is reliant on the camera being angled straight, and the camera turning at all influences what forward is. So it creates just a horrendous abomination that exists within this camera. Basically, what happens in this dungeon is a lot of breaking spiky balls, cutting rope, etc., and the next parts don't really have any interesting things of note. Oh, but, hey, check this out. I broke the game and I parkoured directly out of bounds and got Harry trapped in an infinite loop of grunting and groaning because he was about to fall. That was pretty fun. Then the camera is held in one place, like Resident Evil style, as we move up some ramps protected by angry bronze hogs. Getting hit by the fire stops them, but I'm pretty sure I have to time these right and then hit them with Flipendo in order to knock them upwards. Honestly, it was such an annoying puzzle that I just took the L and moved on by getting hit by them. Whatever. After that very unfortunate L, we get the Expelliarmus spell and can fight a giant gargoyle to escape. That isn't all, however, because we have to use Expelliarmus to fight Malfoy in class. He proves to be the little bitch the school knows him for by summoning a snake when he's about to be beaten. And then he goes unconscious as Harry shows that he's a parcel mouth. You know what? I'm glad that the video game universe saved the whole parcel tongue and parcel mouth thing for this moment in the game instead of shoehorning it in as if it was already established. I really appreciate that. And then,
listen up, you lot.
Oliver Wood teaches us Quidditch. He's finally here, and of course, Harry is still the Seeker. This is where we are taught new broom flying techniques. Well, one, it's the boost function. And much like any game with a boost function, you know exactly what it does. It makes you go really, really fast. And crashing into something when you are going really, really fast has very, very bad consequences. Except in this game, you kind of just spin around in a circle. Next is more sass from Harry as Hermione asks him to get a book for her so she can research the Chamber of Secrets, whatever that is.
Of course. I suppose you want me to sneak out to the library again.
She could just as easily sneak in there to get it since, Harry doesn't have his invisibility cloak anymore. And this part is where I absolutely despise the camera. Well, not absolutely, but it's pretty bad. Absolutely comes later. The sneaking camera hovers vaguely over Harry and lets you look around on a gyroscope-like movement path. It's really bad. It takes me several tries, like it did in the previous game at nearly this exact spot in the game as well, and several wishes for the sneaking section from the first game to come back because that was somehow so much better than this one. And eventually I get to the portrait at the end of the room. There's nothing more to say about it. There was no interaction in that. I just had to beat my head into the wall until I succeeded. We get there and it's more restricted section, courtesy of the first game. Ladders, wall hugging, climbing, jumping, ladders, wall hugging, climbing, jumping, etc., etc. Then it's onto the same large circular room as before, one I almost got caught in from the last game. And after getting to this room, all of the stuff before is over and done with. Nevertheless, we obtain an owl treat and call Hedwig down so she can munch on a delectable little snack. Afterwards, she flies off and uses her omnipotent power to suddenly weigh thousands of pounds more, dropping a ladder down for us. Some more parkour and a few chests later, and we reach the book we need. Oh, by the way, in this game, books attack you, just like flying books. Just thought I'd point that out. Up next is a boss fight with a giant haunted bookshelf that shoots books at us. We have to keep smacking it with Flipendo in order to knock it over. And we push a box towards the end of the same pathway, and now it is time for the sexy ghost parkour party. This time though, the ghosts aren't affected by Lumos, as I said before. After the party, we obtain a new spell, Scourge. We can now use it to clear away ectoplasm. The Ghostbusters would be proud. Then as we leave, a random Slytherin kid attacks us, or maybe it's Goyle, I'm not sure. And he's clearly the same age as Harry, or around there, so I'm not sure what he was doing outside of the dungeon this late at night. Whatever, we mess him up with Flipendo, gung-ho style, and finish the rest of the puzzles, then return to Hermione with her dumb book. Then the next morning, it's time for Transfiguration with Mcgonagall. Yay. This is where we learn the spell Avifors, where we can transform things into birds, except those things are just weirdly shaped alien eggs. I half expected a face hugger to leap out of these things. Once again, Harry has to go into the dungeon full of danger to get the spell book. Yay, I'm so excited. This one is a doozy, a real annoying shitter. It unironically made me rage quit because the parkour is so reliant on the camera that it screwed me up multiple times. First and foremost, we have to clear ectoplasm to hit a couple of switches to open a gate, which leads to the next room, a parkour room. Using Lumos lets us get on top of a large cube in the center of the room where ghosts are patrolling. And here we go. My hatred for this part of the game knows no bounds. This part made me put this game down for a few days to cool off. We have to jump from platform to platform, entirely reliant on the camera not dragging along the oddly shaped wall to mess up our jumping angle. We also have to avoid ghosts because they sort of just float around and mess you up as well because you can't stop them with Lumos. If they hit you midair, they just knock you straight down. It's just all your momentum is gone. So basically, in short, screw this part. I hate it, it's stupid, and it took me several tries and game reloads before I could complete it. And after finishing the worst parkour I've ever played in a video game, I obtain Avifors and some stone egg things turn into birds, and I escape this nightmare palace. With that, and a little bit of cooling off from the garbage camera controls, it's time for Gryffindor to go against Hufflepuff in Quidditch. And we win. It's really not all that hard. One boost and I got to the snitch with no issue whatsoever. The Quidditch parts aren't that difficult. Then Harry awakens in the evening, and you know what time it is. Time for more sneaking. Oh boy. Hermione spontaneously made the Polyjuice potion that requires a piece of hair from an individual, and it's only Harry that's going to use it, instead of Harry and Ron. So we meet Hermione in the girls' bathroom and then slurp it up to look exactly like Goyle.
Harry, are you okay?
I'm fine.
Honestly, my favorite part about this game is how they just had the Harry voice actor, the kid, do a Goyle voice. It's too good. It's the greatest thing ever. Then we get to the dungeon and have to sneak around more prefects to get to Malfoy. I should have tested if getting caught loses points for Slytherin or not. That would have been great. But after a nearly pointless interaction with Malfoy, we sneak back through the dungeon and off we go, back to the girls' bathroom to inform Hermione and Han about Malfoy not being the heir of Slytherin, and off to bed we go. Then it's Flitwick time in the morning. Flitwick, once again, shoves us into a dungeon resembling a hellscape in order to get Incendio. There are quite a number of gargoyles to fight in here, so we have to bully them into the dust. And really, that's about all that we have to do before we get the spellbook. So it isn't as annoying or tedious as the last game was. I guess we have Incendio now. My brain just sort of forgot most of this dungeon. It was so mundane compared to everything else. So it has now been a full day since I last touched the script or recorded any audio. So let's see if I can figure out where I left off. Oh right, Flitwick's Hellscape Dungeon and the Incendio spell. Well, after obtaining the spell, I have to figure out exactly how to light 4 pedestals in order to raise a gate. You'd think it'd be as easy as just lighting them up and taking a hit, but they're timed and will go out in the order that you lit them up in. It takes a lot of finagling and a bit of timing, but the gate eventually opens long enough for me to manically sprint through it. Then comes the final part of the test, back in the first part of the chamber. We have to drop pillars to press buttons to get rid of some fire so we can shoot fire at some hogs, flipendo them up, and parkour across the pillars. Honestly, this was the most boring part. It did take me a solid 10 minutes to figure out that I could use flipendo on the bronze boar fire spitters to raise the platforms though, so I'm just an idiot is all. After Flitwick, Oliver Wood comes to remind us about a Ravenclaw Quidditch match. Too bad that Ravenclaw is willingly going against Gryffindor as if they have any hope of winning at all. It'll be a cold day in the Flitwick dungeons when they do. And it's Ravenclaw versus Gryffindor time. Time for a show. And also time for the toughest Quidditch match I'll have in this game, even though there's only 3 of them. It's not too difficult really, since it seems like the other team's seeker never catches the snitch, no matter how close they get it. It's like the Quidditch coach lady, Madame Hooch, tells the other seekers to go easy on Harry or else they'll be expelled. On the flip side, everyone else is unafraid to tackle Harry at mock speed. It's only a matter of time before you win really, and it's not a matter of time before you lose. So after the Quidditch match, it's time to end the day and move on to the night phase, because obviously Gryffindor won. Now this part, absolutely hilarious. Graphical limitations didn't really let them do much with it, but we get to experience Tom Riddle's diary, which Ron pilfered from Moaning Myrtle's toilet, and Harry doesn't write in it. He just sort of speaks to it, like, you normally do with diaries. It now makes sense why it's an empty diary, so. Tom also just knows his name is Harry Potter without Harry writing in it, which would be a massive red flag for me personally, but this is Harry we're talking about. Riddle reveals that Hagrid actually opened the Chamber of Secrets. Oh, did he really? No, he didn't. He didn't at all. So we're off to see Hagrid late into the eve, as Harry often does. Big blonde bimbo Malfoy is escorting Dumbledore out of Hogwarts after having a bit of goo-goo gaga baby talk with him about people being petrified on the grounds of Hogwarts and how the Ministry wants him out of there. Typical of big government and their zany antics, really. And the end of the conversation is just too good that I have to show you how it goes.
If anyone wanted to find out some stuff, all they'd have to do would be to follow the spiders. That'd lead them right. That's the key to the whole thing. And that's all I'm saying.
Come along now, Hagrid. We don't want to keep the Dementors waiting now, do we?
All right, I'm coming.
And with that, you know exactly what time it is. It's severe arachnophobia time. Yeah, it's time to experience the worst itching and tingling I've ever experienced in my life, because I have really bad arachnophobia and I kind of just want to die now. To be fair, I saw this part coming, and I'm very thankful that I had to fight spiders the size of Harry's arm instead of spiders the size of Harry. Well, we meet Aragog, and holy shit, I can barely even watch through the footage without feeling all itchy and weird. Aragog informs Harry that Hagrid did nothing wrong. He also refuses to tell Harry what exactly lies within the Chamber of Secrets, because a giant flesh-eating spider is made of nothing but bitch and moan, and declares Harry his children's next grand buffet. I really hate to tell you, Aragog, but Harry doesn't have much in the way of meat on his bones. In order to let him know just that, we burn his internet straight to the ground. I'm glad that Harry does what any reasonable person would do when seeing a spider that large. First, I don't know what it is, but I just want to point out just how absolutely insane video game spiders are. I guess with the lack of limitations for reality, they can just go all the way and become something absolutely mind-bogglingly terrifying. Spitting poisons, leaping 200 feet, sharp pincers, the whole thing. Or maybe, I don't know, controlling hundreds upon thousands of smaller spiders and becoming a boss fight for a 12-year-old child sounds pretty fun too. Because yeah, that's what has to happen next as Harry and Aragog fall into a deep pit. Too bad this boss fight is easier than a girl I met in high school. Ooh, that was a nasty one. Too bad this boss fight is easier than Hermione? Haha. Alright, moving on. After the fight, Ron saves the queen, Ron saves Harry using Blue Bertha, the blue beat-em-up beetle that isn't actually a beetle. It's a Ford Anglia. And Hermione is gone somewhere, and the diary is missing. All of this crazy shit just keeps on happening, but Ron, you know what, too tired to deal with it. It's time for bed. He's gotta get his beauty sleep, and Harry agrees. Let's get some beauty sleep. And then we wake up the next morning. Not sure how Harry fell asleep after seeing a spider that massive. I certainly wouldn't be sleeping for months, but we wake up, Harry wakes up, and Hermione and Vernon meet with Harry and talk about his big match with Slytherin that day. It's also at this point that I realize I'm butchering their names so much every time they appear together that I don't even know which is which or who is who anymore. Well, to a less important degree, Harry hears the voices of Doomguy again, like an hour and a half since he last heard it. But the Quidditch match is more important, so let's get that done with. And just as soon as it begins, it pretty much ends. If you want exact timing, it takes 1 minute and 10 seconds before I wipe the floor with Malfoy, per usual, and I get the Quidditch Cup for Gryffindor. Oliver Wood is now allowed to take a permanent backseat for the rest of his life because his only goal was to obtain the Quidditch Cup, which canonically doesn't happen until like Harry's 5th year, I think. But afterwards, it's off to bed, and then we get to Ron and Harry talking with one another about the Chamber of Secrets. Sorry, the Chamber of Sasscrets, or the Chamber of Sass. Harry reasons with Ron that the basilisk is a pothead who cares about nothing but pipes. Good thing we have to kill him too. Not because he's a pothead, but because he's a giant snake bent on killing impure wizards. Also because he's a pothead. Sorry, get a more interesting hobby that doesn't make you smell like a cat's asshole, please. Harry and Ron meet up in the girls' bathroom, and Moaning Myrtle throws out some exposition instead of flirting with Harry like she usually does. Is it necrophilia if the ghost comes onto you? Regardless, after Harry says the forbidden words in the forbidden language, the Chamber of Sass finally opens, and Harry can take his place on the throne. Well, actually, Harry wanders into the Chamber of Sass looking for a nerd to beat up and a girl to save. And by wanders, I mean full sprints and swan dives into the Chamber of Secrets. He finds Ginny, so that could possibly bring a solution to both problems if he was daring enough, but it turns out Tom Riddle is actually here, so I guess he's found the actual nerd to beat up. After Tom Riddle does some annoying, typical monologuing about mudbloods, the basilisk appears, ready to devour Harry, and suddenly Fawkes attacks the basilisk with its claws, scraping it up and ruining its eyesight. Well, not despite the fact that the basilisk had already looked at Harry, and Harry had looked at the basilisk, it cannot kill Harry with a single look anymore. But it's boss fight time. And really, this boss is easy picking. Fawkes drops the sword of Godric Gryffindor for Harry to use. Awesome. And I pick it up and prepare myself for the battle to come. You know, I'm ready and excited for hack and slash, dodging back and forth, stabbing and jabbing as much as I can before I ultimately fall because it's a giant person-devouring snake, and hold on. Wait. The sword is just a fancier wand? We have to dodge green oobleck that it spits out and then use the magical sword to fire a beam of white pow... Wait, that's not something I should say. A beam of white energy to hurt him? Alright, well, I guess we do that, and then he snakes away into a pipe and reappears somewhere. The magic sword flings out of Harry's hand, and we have to pick it up somewhere else. And we have to repeat this until we beat the stupid idiot snake, and, well, and then this happens. And with that, Ginny is saved, Harry is the hero, and it's high time we go to the Grand Hall for the House Cup ceremony, where Gryffindor wins. Who would have thought? Then after that, Harry, Ron, and Hermione find themselves in Dumbledore's office, where they are told about Tom, Riddle's diary, and that's about it. The game ends with Harry and Ron talking about loyalty, friendship, and courage, even though only Harry did literally everything in the game, especially braving the man-eating spiders. So what does he know about loyalty and friendship? But the real question is, what did I think of the game? Let's talk about that in the review section. See you there. Ooh, I'm just kidding. This video is already pretty long, and so I'm gonna have to say, get baited, and we'll pick it back up in a part 2. My name is Jack. If I don't see you in part 2, I love you. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for criticizing or commenting. You're incredible.